My name is Hannah Campbell. I am a small business owner and a full-time mom in Chicago, Illinois. I grew up in gifted and talented classrooms. I was bored even in them. I know at one point in 5th grade, I was cutting holes in all my clothes. But by high school, I was in more advanced classes and was really, really, really obsessed with doing well. I remember definitely experiencing anxiety and depression in those times, though I didn't have a name for it. I just knew that life was really hard for me sometimes. It wasn't until my freshman year of college that I had my first panic attack. It was a big deal. I didn't at the time know it was a panic attack. Still didn't have a word for anxiety. I just knew that everything was too much. I kept having panic attacks, kept experiencing intermittent depression for years. In 2014, I was working a pretty draining job. I had a 1-year-old at home and I was working in a lab, a quality lab, working 12-hour shifts in a very fast-paced environment. And things kind of came to a head one day and I had a big old whopper of a panic attack to the point that my boss called 911 and I was carried out on a stretcher into the ambulance. And as soon as the door shut on the ambulance, the paramedic asked me what anti-anxiety medication I'm on. And I said, me? I don't have anxiety. I'm not on medication. Over the course of the next 3 months, things got really bad. In retrospect, I experienced burnout and I began seeing a therapist twice a week. And I started medication for anxiety, finally got the anxiety and the depression diagnoses, started, medication and seeing my doctors regularly and kind of got things on track while I was not working. I took almost 3 months of medical leave from work because I couldn't work. It was a really dark place, but it wasn't for almost 10 years after that, like a ton of bricks, it hit me that I was autistic. I, for the first time, came across something, I wish I could remember what it was, that showed me that what autism actually is and what it actually can look like in different ways other than what I believed was the only way autism looked. And saw so much of myself in that. It was pretty much a no-brainer. But to be safe, I made it my whole personality to read every book, every article, every study, listen to every podcast, everything I could possibly do about autism. And then, brought a PowerPoint presentation to my therapist so she could know. She helped me prepare to tell my partner, who was very supportive. And then I told my psychiatrist, and she helped me get my diagnosis for autism. And that was in spring of 2024. So I've spent the last year working with my therapist to figure out what structures I've built in my life, in my personality, that were there to support my autism and to help me fit in, to help me survive in this world. And those were my masks. And I spent the last year figuring out what parts of my mask served me, what parts of my masks I needed, and what parts of my mask no longer served me. And I'm really excited about shedding that which doesn't serve me. One of the most important things I've learned about masking is that it takes a lot of resources to do. When I'm masking, I'm not being my most authentic self. And that takes work. It takes energy to put on a mask. And that work stacks on top of itself the more I'm masking. I sell my product for my business at markets and things like that. And that is especially a time where I'm highly masked because I'm talking to a lot of people. I'm trying to sell my brand. I'm often in hot environments, or maybe it's raining. There's a lot of sensory input. I'm dressed in clothing that makes me look professional, which is typically uncomfortable. All of these things are masks. Dealing with all of these things is part of my mask. And what I've learned is that it's really exhausting doing all of those things. If I could sell my product in sweatpants and a sweatshirt in a comfortable room without having to talk to people, and I could still sell as much, I would, and I would be much less exhausted at the end. But I wouldn't sell as much. So what I've also learned about masking is that can be really important. It can help me be successful, and it can protect me when I'm in environments that aren't safe to be unmasked in. When I was younger, several times I found myself in really uncomfortable situations because I was staring at people, and I didn't really even realize I was doing it. But people don't like to be stared at, it turns out, and people can get really defensive or protective of themselves if they feel like they're being watched. And I've learned not to do that. And that's kind of like a mask. If I am just staring off into space thinking about something, I've had to teach myself not to do that. And all these, that's definitely a way that masking protects me. So what I've really learned about masking is that it is exhausting and can also be really important. When I am unmasked, it feels better. It feels comfortable, assuming I'm in a place that I feel safe to be unmasked, which is the times that I unmask. So, but being able to, release tension by shaking my hands and being able to just stare into space, or, swipe on a game that like helps me kind of like recenter myself, or being able to not make small talk if I don't want to, or I don't have the energy, feels good. It feels comfortable. And I've spent the last year like figuring out how to be unmasked. I've spent the last year figuring out what things I've made myself do my whole life, because I've been told over and over and over again that this is how people are, this is what people do, this is how we behave. And figuring out which of those things aren't how this person is, aren't how this person behaves, aren't how this person thrives has been hard. And I feel guilty giving up those things, not participating in the performance of what's expected of me as a human. So there's definitely like guilt and shame sometimes, but also just like relief, just feeling like it's okay. It's a really good feeling. And it's definitely helped me make better connections with people because I'm just being more authentically myself. I don't know how much other people actually notice that I'm unmasking. When I'm unmasking, I don't think it's as big of a deal to other people as it is to me, but it feels better. What I certainly didn't know about masking before I identified my autism, and what I think a lot of people don't know about masking, is that it's not so simple as it sounds. It's not putting on a mask. It's not changing who you are. It is finding ways to be human in the society that we live in. It's manually putting systems and structures in place that support you in your day-to-day life and that protect you from people who don't like people who are different. My masking was not a conscious decision. It was not a manipulation. It was not a system that I built intentionally. My mask has always been just me doing things or behaving in certain ways because I realized that if I didn't, I wouldn't be safe, or I wouldn't be accepted, or I wouldn't be able to accomplish the things that I need to accomplish. In a lot of ways, masking is a defense mechanism, whereas I feel like some people think it's an offense mechanism. I feel like people think it's you hear that someone is masked and you think that it's someone trying to trick you, and that's not the case. I'm just trying not to be tricked myself. Growing up, people knew I was different. I knew I was different, but I thought I had everyone fooled. But in retrospect, no one was fooled. Everyone knew I was different. Everyone knew it was weird. So I wish I could go back and tell myself that it's okay. Just like do what feels good for you, because you're wasting so much energy on trying to be who you think these people want you to be, and it's not working either. So just be who you are, and you'll feel more okay and more comfortable, and you will find your people so much faster. Because when you're masking so hard that people don't know your true heart, your connections aren't as strong, they're not as authentic. The second you start letting go of trying to be what you think other people want you to be, the people who want someone who is you, that is who you are in your heart, will find you. And I wish I had known that so long ago, because when I started figuring out how to shed some of my mask, I started finding really true, deep connections with people. And that's just not possible when you have all these defense mechanisms up.